Hi, class. I wanted to give you some ideas on how you can apply Laura Mulvey's visual pleasure to our three primary sources on the topic of the female vampire. Carmilla is one of the earliest representations, if not the earliest representation of the female vampire. She's also a vampire that is attracted to the same sex. The main seduction in the storyline, although this piece was written by a man, really focuses on the romantic relationship, even pretty sexual relationship between two women. There's a lot of connotations in there. In A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, the girl, which is the vampire, has no name. And I think there's something very unique about that, right? We know that the film was written and directed by a woman of Irani descent. And we want to think a little bit about why the director or the writer would create this character with no name. What is that supposed to represent? We know that all the other characters have a name, but this heroine or even anti-hero doesn't have a name. There's something very contemporary, obviously, about the representation of the girl. She skates around at night in the dark, punishing bad men, and the relationship and the friendship that she develops with the woman that works in the sex industry, where she becomes her protector, is also very unique. So compare the relationship, the relationship between women in Carmilla with that of what's happening in A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Another comparison is when you get to Dracula. So I think that Mina and Lucy's relationship is also interesting because I feel like in a lot of ways that relationship, that desire, there's a lot of sexual desire, there's a lot of sexual energy, similar to Carmilla. And we know also of the obvious dichotomy where, Mina can almost be seen as a good girl, right? She doesn't like talking about sex. She shies away from and is shocked from the images that she sees on the copy of the Kama Sutra when she finds it on that desk. And she's always like telling Lucy, "Oh, you're going a little too far," or "Don't talk about that," right? Lucy, on the other hand, even the way that she was casted with the beautiful red hair, is very flirtatious. You can tell she's walked into like her feminine power. They're both at the age where they're, preparing to get married, and to become, sexual beings in a marriage. And specifically with Lucy, we know she's very flirtatious, and we also know that she knows about the power of seduction. At some point in the movie, she has a party and she invites all of her suitors, like all of her suitors are there, and she flirts with each and every one of them. And there's this one particular line that I found interesting where she tells Mina, "I know what men want. Watch me." And so Mina, again, is kind of put into a position where she's gazing and watching Lucy just kind of be very playful with each of her suitors, very flirtatious, and kind of having them, eaten out of the palm of her hand. Now, we know that in Dracula, Lucy becomes a victim to Dracula, and he ends up turning her into a vampire. I want you to think about the topic of consent and what Mulvey says, that, film or representations of women can really be used as a weapon against women. And consent is a big topic because, we have vampires feeding on people that did not consent that are actually fighting. And after teaching this topic for a couple of semesters, I got into a really good conversation with a student where we were talking about how actually Lucy never consents, but the way that it's represented in the movie, especially when Dracula attacks her and basically makes her a vampire, is very sexualized. and not really, it doesn't really acknowledge that, Lucy wasn't even conscious, right? She was like under a spell, and all of that being very, very symbolic. And what does that say about the topic of consent? Now, the gaze is something that, we are all kind of psychologically, people like Lacan, and obviously Mulvey talks a little bit about the mirror stage. If you want to incorporate that into your analysis, please feel free to. But that, as human beings, we're basically, we have a pull, we have a desire to watch, right? The gaze, we have a desire to watch. And in that watching, we are also, quote unquote, othering, right? So what Mulvey is saying is that if representations of women are written in a way to indulge others and not necessarily, or to speak to other people's unconscious or subconscious desires, right? Then that in a way we are dehumanizing women, and we are representing them in a way where they're only there for consumption. So obviously, the essay goes on and on and on and on and gives you a lot more detail and more theory, but I just wanted to give you some examples on how you can look at the three primary sources, Carmilla, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, and Dracula, and apply Mulvey and the concept of the gaze to each of them. Not just apply them, but to connect it. And I think that'll be helpful if you can organize some of your thoughts that way, so that when we get to the midterm, this becomes a little bit more natural, a little bit more easy for you to, number one, be able to apply things, but number two, also to be able to see the connections between them all. So I hope this video was helpful. If you need me to make any other lecture videos, please let me know. I'm always happy to record them for you. Okay, have a good day.